And welcome to Know Your Value, Show Your Value, Part 2 with Miss DeAnnah and Women Exceeding. And so I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. If you are in the Get Response meeting, if you could just drop something in the chat for me so that I know that you all can hear me. The chat box is going to be this little box down here. Awesome. Thank you, Maya, Veronica. Appreciate it. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Again, this is Know Your Value, Show Your Value Part 2. If you did not see Part 1 on resumes, please make sure to go to our YouTube page and check it out. It was absolutely fantastic. This one, Part 2, is all about how to ace your interview, and we've got DeAnnah with us from E3 Professional Services. Before I pass it over to her, I'm going to talk a little bit about Women Exceeding. Women Exceeding is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to empower women to identify, pursue, and exceed their professional goals through our 4 pillars, which are mentorship, education, networking, and business development. We've been very lucky that we've been able to provide some incredible webinars, and we're going to continue to do so. So please stay in touch with us, stay connected. At the end of the presentation, we'll include all of our information so that you can stay connected with us, whether it's through social media or through our mailing list. And before I pass it over to DeAnnah to take the reins for our presentation today, I just want to say if you have any questions, which I'm sure you will, we had a ton of questions last time and got a lot of great answers. Feel free to type them into the chat. I will keep track of those questions as your moderator. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, I will ask DeAnnah those questions. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to drop questions on Facebook as well. We are keeping track of that. And thank you for joining. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to DeAnnah.
Thank you, Simone, and hello to everyone that has joined in today. I am so glad to be back. So for those of you that are not new to me and that were able to join the webinar, I'm glad that you are back. If you are new to the Women Exceeding webinars or you just didn't get a chance to catch the first one, welcome, welcome. I have a lot in store for you. As those of you that have participated before know, I like to drop a lot of gems. So if you do not have a pen and paper or your iPad or your tablet or even your cell phone with the notes section open so you can take some notes, I would strongly encourage you to go grab something to do that. As Simone said, I am the CEO of E3 Professional Services. I've been in business now for about 3 years and things have been booming. So I'm excited to share the resources and the strategies that's going to help you to ace your interview. So let's jump right in because we got a lot to talk about. All right. So today's agenda, what we're going to focus on is how to be organized during your search. B, how to be prepared during your interview or for your interview. And then lastly, how to communicate your value proposition. And for many of you, value proposition is not a new concept. You guys are used to this from my previous webinar. So we're going to revisit some of those points to see how you convey your value in your interview. So I like to do a temperature check to make sure the people that are logged in are in the right place. Because if you're not in the right place, I want to give you a chance to peace out and get to the right place. So you know you're in the right place this evening if you're tired of going into interviews and not feeling confident regarding what you actually bring to the company. You should never go into an interview not understanding exactly how the company is going to benefit from having you come in versus someone else. So if you're tired of going into interviews and you haven't been feeling confident, this is going to be the right place for you. If you're tired of going through the interview process and not being selected for roles you know you were a good fit for, you're in the right place. And if you haven't been getting interviews for the jobs you actually desire to have, you're in the right place. And last but most certainly not least, if you are tired of living paycheck to paycheck, robbing Peter to pay Paul, anytime you want to do something fun, you are in the right place. I know COVID is still alive and real right now, so many of you all are probably not going to do a whole lot that's fun. But if you do feel like, you don't have the discretionary income to have flexibility with your spending, then that's what that very last bullet is pertaining to. All right, so let me give you all quick background about me so that you understand and know who's talking to you, if you're not familiar with who I am already. So, as a CEO of E3, as the CEO of E3 Professional Services, I serve as pretty much the lead career strategist. And so, what we do is we advance minorities in their careers. We also partner with companies to help diversify their leadership teams. So, from a one-to-one perspective, or from a B2C perspective, my direct services to consumers, I work with professionals individually and in small groups to help them actually advance further in their careers. Then on the business side or the corporate side, I actually work with different organizations, a lot of financial institutions and tech companies to help them have more diverse senior leadership teams and to create more inclusive and engaging cultures for their people of color within their organization so that they attract top talent and they retain the talent that they have that are diverse employees, but also making sure there is a direct pipeline for these individuals to move into leadership roles and be compensated at the rate that they deserve to be compensated at. I do work with nonprofits very frequently. I work with Women Exceeding whenever I get the chance. Absolutely love the work that Women Exceeding is doing. I have been featured in Forbes, in Voyage Houston. I've done work with USA Today. I'm on the Forbes Coaching Council. I have two kids, as you can see in the photo, Dariah and DJ. Dariah is 10. DJ is going on 4 in July, so y'all say a prayer for me because he think he runs the show. But I also partner with other nonprofits outside of Houston. So I am from Chicago, and so I very frequently will travel to Chicago to work with certain nonprofits that specifically works with women of color that are single moms or struggling to kind of get their footing and to be successful in their careers. So, excuse me, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. So if you are not already following Women Exceeding or putting some efforts into supporting the work that Women Exceeding does or any nonprofit within your area, I strongly encourage you to do so. When you give back, you receive it tenfold. So just keep that in mind too as you are preparing to advance in your careers. So let's jump right on in. So, am I ready for this interview? A lot of people ask themselves this question. I always like to tell people the question really is this interview ready for me? You should come into your interview amped, ready to go, knowing what you're going to convey in terms of your value and have questions ready for your interviewer. So, we're going to dive right in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is being organized. So here are 3 main reasons why it's important to be organized within your job search, but more so, even the more so when preparing for an interview. If you are not organized, you will miss certain opportunities. So you may have an opportunity to get an interview with a company, but if you're not organized enough to know when to follow up or to know that it's time to follow up, you will very much so possibly miss an opportunity to actually get an interview. The next reason why it's important is it allows you better planning for allocating your time so that you have a more effective job search. You don't want to go into an interview for a role that you know you are not interested in or you really don't want to go into. So having that time to be diligent and kind of do an additional once over for that job description to make sure, is this something I really want to move forward with? Do I want to allocate my time and resources to this, or do I want to focus my energy on a better, more fitting opportunity? And then last but most certainly not least, when you're organized, it allows you to position yourself as the best candidate for the role. This is extremely huge because a lot of individuals, when they start their job search, and if this is you, feel free to drop a 1, or if you're like, you ain't gonna get me to own that, it's cool. But a lot of individuals, when they come to us for services and we start talking about how to organize their job search, they have not developed a plan and a strategy for what their job search is going to look like. They simply feel like I'm going to take my resume and I'm simply going to just apply for roles and I'm going to wait for someone to call me or email me for an interview. And that is not the way to get through your job search in an expedited time frame, nor is it the way to get to the best potential role for you at the best compensation levels. So making sure you actually are organized is really going to help you to be intentional, strategic, and use your time effectively, which will allow you to position yourself as the best fit for that role. So you'll be like many of my clients who says, DeAnnah, I have these different job offers. I don't know which one to choose. And then we have to have a conversation about what is going to be the best compensation package versus you trying to figure out, why am I not getting interviews? There's two completely different outcomes when you choose to organize your job search versus not choosing to organize your job search. So let's jump into being organized. And it's pretty simple for being organized. I didn't want to spend too much time on this piece. So having a job search tracker is so important. Here's what a job search tracker does. And I'll be sure to send Simone and Christina, our job search organizer that we use here at E3, so that you all have something that you can use to track your progress within your own job search. The job search organizer will allow you to do a few things. Keep track of the jobs you've applied for, establish who your point of contacts are, and keep track of your conversations. So you can actually talk yourself out of a job, talk yourself out of an interview, or just the way you move about your job search will eliminate you as a viable candidate if you are not organized in your job search. And so I want to make sure I lay the foundation for why it's important to do this before we could even talk about how to ace your interview. Because if you're not prepared and you have not established who your point of contacts are within that company, if you have not kept track of certain conversations, it is going to eventually hinder you, possibly depending on how high of a level of a role you're going to be going for. So I want to make sure that you all understand that. Next, being organized entails scheduling timelines for follow-up. This piece is so critical. You have to follow up. If you are scheduled for an interview, you need to make sure let me stop. I'm gonna wait before we get to that. So scheduling times for follow-up. I'm jumping the gun here, jumping the gun on my notes. So making sure you schedule times for follow-up is going to be super duper important, because you have to make sure you are following up in an adequate time frame to secure interviews and to make sure you are on track for having certain conversations that are imperative to you moving through the interview process effectively and efficiently. Okay, so that's the follow-up piece. And then lastly, you want to establish what your value proposition is for that role within that company, and establish what your professional goals are as it relates to the role and the company. So that's the foundation for being organized, okay? And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment box, and Simone will go through and we will answer those questions at the end. So hope you got your pen and paper ready. Hope everybody is clear on the importance of being organized and how it is going to help you leading up to the interview process and even during the interview process. So let's go into your interview prep. So what exactly do you prep for an interview, and how do you prep for an interview? These are two things that people think they know a little bit about. And then some people recognize, I really don't know what to be preparing for an interview. I know those baseline questions. Why are you interested in the role? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Everyone kind of knows these baseline questions that many interviewers may ask. But the ones who tend to shine interviews and the ones that tend to position themselves to be compensated at a higher level and to be the most valuable candidate are the individuals who understand how to prep and what to prep. So the things that you are going to actually be thinking about and researching to prepare for your interview is going to focus on the goals of the company, their strategic plans, or their pain points. And a lot of times this can be siloed or narrowed down to the specific division or department that you're going to work in, or you can do it from a holistic company view. Either or will work, but it's super duper important for you to take time and actually go to the company's website, read their about us page, look at their current news, look at some of the focuses in terms of their strategic plans, check out their social media pages. A lot of times you can get what you need simply from the things that the company posts or news that has been published about the company. People miss out on an opportunity to really sell themselves effectively because they don't do their research in advance to understand what the problem is. I can't come and talk to you about the solution that I can provide to you if I don't know what your problem is. I don't know where your pain points are. I don't know what your goals are. So it works the same when you're preparing to go into an interview. So, like I mentioned, it's usually found on the company site or social media. Another thing that you have to focus on to prepare and research is the job description. So many of us, myself included, back when I used to, actually participate in my own job searches, um, I am guilty of doing a quick scan and it's like, oh, it looks like I'm a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and apply without thoroughly reading that job description. Everybody is guilty of doing it either all the time, sometimes. It's okay, as long as that's not what you're doing all the time. It's okay if every now and again you scan and you submit a resume for an opportunity because you're like, oh, I know this is a good fit. I don't have to read it in too much detail. Okay, cool. You can do that every now and again within your search, but not as the primary way to actually apply for jobs. But when you get that email or when you get that call back for an interview, it's important that you go back to that job description and you go through it with a fine tooth comb. Even if you read it in detail before applying, you want to go back to it because now you want to identify very specifically how you meet the top objectives of that role, the tangible examples you want to pull from your previous experiences that is going to demonstrate your ability to be successful in meeting the different objectives within the job description. You also want to be able to capture information that you may have not been able to find online to let you know more about the role and why it exists. A lot of times companies now will kind of give you a little background info as to what the company does and why the company is looking for someone for that role, what they're hoping to achieve. And so it's important that you read this thoroughly and understand how this connects with you as the professional that is coming in and providing the service or expertise to help this company move forward. So these are the three primary things that my clients and I focus on in terms of breaking down the job description. How will you meet the top objectives of the role? So we identify what the top objectives are, because there are things that rank higher in priority than others. Then we go through and we assess what are tangible examples you have to meet these top objectives. If there's three top objectives, do you have tangible examples that's going to help you to demonstrate your ability to meet these objectives, at least two out of the three objectives, at a minimum? But those top objectives, if you can literally explain, this is how I can meet X, Y, and Z objectives. And here are examples of when I've done something similar in my previous roles, and here are the results of that work. How I was able to move the needle, how I was able to increase revenue, how I was able to improve efficiency, workflow efficiency within the organization or within my department. These are the different people that were impacted by this work that I did. So being very clear on what those tangible examples are super duper important. And then lastly, doing an additional kind of overview of that job description to see, is there anything that I've missed about why this company is searching for this role? I actually had a recruiter. They had reached out to me to say, hey, we have X, Y, and Z role available. Can you please share, with your network? Because I have quite a few partnerships with companies and recruiters. And the first question I asked was, because it was a diversity, equity, and inclusion role, I said, is this a reactive or a proactive need for you all? Are you reacting to something within your organization that happened and now you're trying to kind of fix it? Or are you being proactive to bring in someone to kind of change the narrative and to shake things up? and they got offended for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. I kind of can guess why they got offended, because it was reactive and they didn't want to disclose why it was reactive. But this is a question you don't have to ask it exactly how I did, because I ask it my own way. We'll talk about different ways on how to formulate certain questions, if you decide to schedule a session. But these are the types of questions that you can ask in an interview to better understand what you're walking into. A lot of people complain about being in toxic work environments when during that interview process, you could have asked certain questions that would give you signals as to what type of situation you're walking into. You can never really know fully what you're walking into, because you really don't know until you get there for the most part. But you can ask the right questions to gather enough information to help you assess if this is an environment you want to walk into, or the type of role you want to walk into. And so asking questions about why the role is now available. Is this something reactive that has happened and now you need to fill this role? Or are you being proactive and this is a role that you are filling for, a number of different reasons? So that is something that's going to let you know if you're walking into what's the way to say it without cursing? A hot mess. If this is one of the ways to find out if you're walking into a hot mess that you got to clean up, versus if you're walking into a situation where they're wanting you to simply be kind of proactive, take the lead, take the charge, and establish a change within the department or within that role. So keep that in mind. Another thing that you want to prepare, that I be so mad when people don't do this. You have to research your interviewer. Always know who you are talking to before you get on a video call or a phone call. I never do a corporate workshop without knowing who is in the room. Well, I guess the virtual room. I never talk to a group without knowing who my audience is. I have to know that. And for you as a job seeker, you want to know, who am I going to be talking to? Okay, here is why it is important. Well, they're going to research you. Okay, point blank, period. Anytime I've had to do any hiring, the first thing I do is Google the person's name. And when you Google a person's name, what's going to happen is their LinkedIn is going to pop up if they've created a LinkedIn profile, regardless if the LinkedIn profile is good, regardless if they ever use their LinkedIn profile. If they have a LinkedIn profile, that's one of the first things that are going to pop up. The next thing that's going to pop up is their other social media pages, such as Facebook. Facebook tends to pop up way higher than Instagram, but Instagram also does pop up. YouTube, if you have any videos on YouTube, that's going to pop up as well. And then other images and any other sites that has your name mentioned will also pop up. But it is super duper important to make sure you know what pops up when people Google you. I Google myself all the time. You need to Google yourself to figure out what's out there. And then on the flip side, you need to Google who you're interviewing, because they are going to interview you. So you want to make sure you clean up whatever it is that they may see or find when they look you up. And you need to do that before you start your job search, because to be 100% honest, before people call folks for an interview, even if it's an initial phone screening, they will likely Google you. After they pull out the 5 or 10 people that they are going to interview for that first round, they are going to start Googling. Some people will schedule the interviews and then start Googling folks, but you don't want to be in an interview and they're like, yeah, so we saw on your Facebook page, that you hate the LGBT community. Well, I'm actually a huge advocate of the LGBTQ community. So I would like to learn more about, why you have so much hate towards the community, and you didn't lost you can bet your bottom dollar you didn't lost the job at that point. So you want to be cognizant of what your digital footprint looks like. And then on the flip side, like I said, research who your interviewer is. Okay? This is going to allow you to find commonalities. This is going to allow you to see different causes they support. And a lot of this you'll find directly on their LinkedIn. A lot of the people that are going to be interviewing you for roles, 9 times out of 10, they have a pretty decent LinkedIn. When I say decent, meaning They have information about causes they support. They probably have shared other posts or content from the company or companies that they're interested in, or nonprofits that they're interested in. You can learn a little bit about your interviewer from looking at their LinkedIn page. Now, one person asked me when I was on a webinar doing a workshop, and they said, well, how am I gonna know? What if I don't know who my interviewer is? They just, told me that my interview is scheduled for such and such day. They didn't tell me who it was with. I said, so why not call and ask? Why not send an email and ask? It's not proprietary information. They can disclose who your interviewer is or will be. Sometimes it's multiple people. Sometimes it's one person. But it's important that if they don't tell you that you ask. It's your responsibility to ask these questions if you don't have that information. It's no one's fault but your own if you don't know who your interviewer is. And so what can happen in an interview, I want to kind of really make sure y'all can see how beneficial it is to do your research. If before talking to your interviewer, you have researched and you see, oh, they support a lot of marine life causes. They're really huge advocates of marine life. You also can see that they support work. They do a lot of work with homeless shelters, maybe, right? And you may say, I like to do work with homeless shelters, or I like to volunteer with different nonprofits, and I have, volunteered for a homeless shelter. That right there is a key factor that you can use to establish a human connection with your interviewer. You're creating a certain level of buy-in where they feel like they can relate to you. They feel a connection with you, and there's nothing that's going to trump that human connection. If your interviewer likes you and they feel connected to you, they are then going to become an advocate versus just an interviewer. So it is super duper important to understand your interviewer's past. You may see your interviewer had the same major that you had in high school. So a question you may want to ask after the interview is over to kind of wrap things up. And after you've asked your questions that are, relative to the job, you may say, hey, Simone, I saw you got a degree in chemistry. How did you end up switching into the HR with a degree in chemistry? Because I studied chemistry at Howard University, right? Like, they're going to be like, wow, you study chemistry too? Yeah, this is how I got into this pro, yada, yada. And they're going to feel so important. And then they're going to feel like you're somebody that they can relate to. You relate to something that they've been through or something that they've identified with at some point in their lives. I research any lead for B2B contracts that I acquire. I research them thoroughly. I go look at their Facebook posts. I look and see if they got kids. If they got kids, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, so they are gonna be able to relate to the whole trying to work from home and manage their kids situation. Okay, boom. So somewhere on this call, I'm gonna make sure I throw out a little hint about how challenging it is to navigate this work from home situation and having kids, and it never fails. If I find someone that is in that similar predicament, they're like, I know it's so hard, and they just get to going on about how challenging it has been. And now we've established a connection, and they're usually way more quicker in moving through that process of paying me so that I can now be a vendor, or now I can come in and work with their organization or whatever the initiatives are. So just like I'm telling you to do your research on your interviewer and research the companies and all these different things, I do these myself. I practice what I preach when it comes to this. Okay, so this is a huge part of acing your interview. You're going to get way further, way faster, feel more comfortable, and make a huge impact with your interviewer when you can find commonalities where you can relate to them because you're making a human connection with them in that moment. Hope all of that makes sense. Drop a 1 if you're still with me and that makes sense in the comment box. Let me switch over so I can see the comment box real quick. Okay. Okay, yeah, I see some ones coming through. Perfect. Okay, let me switch back. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Can y'all still see my screen? Yes, you can. Okay. So next is conveying your value proposition. Now, we covered the importance of your value proposition last webinar. And we also broke down what is included in your value proposition. If you did not catch that webinar, make sure you do like Simone said and head to Women Exceeding's YouTube channel so that you can watch the replay of that video. That video, I dropped high ticket items and high ticket bombshells, so to speak, in terms of your value proposition, stuff that I do not give out for free ever. I dropped it in that webinar. So thank you so much, Simone. Simone dropped the link in the comments for you already. So copy and paste it, save it somewhere so that you can have the context needed to understand what we're getting ready to talk about here with your value proposition. So in order to, so as we talked about last time, the importance of just knowing your value proposition in general, right? As it pertains to each role you've had in the past and where you're trying to go. Now, before you go into an interview, I always have my clients to establish what is your specific value proposition as it relates to the role you're interviewing with for the company that you're interviewing with. Because it may look a little different from your general value proposition because every company and every role is different. Even if it's the same title, the role looks different depending on the company, their needs, their culture, their problems, goals, etc. So in order to do this, what we do is we assess their experiences, or you'll assess your experiences against the job description to understand where you add the most values and what experiences you've had in the past that connects to those specific points that you feel you can add value to. So, for example, if one of the objectives is managing a budget, and I know I have years of budget management experience, and I've managed budgets in excess of, let's say, $2 million, right? My value proposition with that is going to include them understanding and knowing at some point during that interview when they're asking me questions, I'm making sure I'm going to use examples that's going to allow me to highlight how I managed a budget of X number of dollars exceeding, a budget that exceeded $2 million, or in excess of, excuse me, that was the word I was looking for, in excess of $2 million. And this is how I was able to maximize costs and save money, or just maximize costs to ensure resources were allocated effectively and efficiently. And this was the outcome of it. That is going to help an interviewer to then understand, okay, we need her to manage budget. Our budgets don't exceed $50,000. This girl can manage a budget up to $2 million. She knows how to save money, and she has experience with allocating resources in a way that yields these type of results. That speaks volumes. We talked about this in the last webinar. Results speak volumes. So you have to figure out what is going to be those points that are your value propositions, or those points where you add the most value as it pertains to that particular role within that particular company. And what examples can you connect to that proves it? It means nothing if you can't prove it. It means nothing if your story or your examples that you're sharing when they're asking you certain questions, if they don't direct your audience member or your interviewer to these value added points that you want to share. You control the narrative. It doesn't matter what question they ask. You control the narrative. So you make sure you've prepared yourself so that you can talk about those experiences that are important for you to share, that they need to know so they can see this is how and where I add value and why you need me. Next, you want to identify specific examples of your past performance that demonstrate the results of your work as it relates to the priorities of the company. Okay. Now, I talked about how it relates to the role, but you also want to talk about how it relates to the company, because a lot of things come from the top down, specifically for those of you that are wanting to move into senior level leadership roles. If you're not looking to move into a senior level leadership role, that first bullet is more for you. The second bullet, where you're figuring out what examples from your past performance are going to lend itself to the priorities of the company, that's really going to be those of you moving into senior leadership, because they are going to be trusting you to drive the force that allows the different departments or the department that you're over to meet certain objectives. So you're going to be leading a team 9 times out of 10 to ensure they are actually meeting the goals of the company. So you have to be able to demonstrate how you've been able to do that within previous roles. And then lastly, when you understand and establish your value proposition, guess what? This is giving you leveraging power during your salary negotiation. Your first point of contact with a company is your resume. So your resume is your first impression, it's your first line of advocacy, and it's the first thing that represents you and what you're worth to a company. So that's the first phase of establishing your leverage during a salary negotiation, your resume when you apply. The next thing is the interview process, how you convey that value in words, the type of examples you use, the type of results you demonstrate within your examples, the type of questions you ask the company that you come prepared with. These are all things that are setting you up for what type of leverage you're going to have when it comes down to salary negotiation. If you're still with me, drop a 1 in those comment box real quick. Make sure y'all are still here. Perfect. All right. So here is the last thing that I want to talk about. And this is something that I'm going to say probably 10, not even 10%, less than 10% of professionals do this when they are moving through an interview process. Y'all ready? 30, 60, and 90-day plans. And I'm going to be 100% transparent with you all. My company focuses primarily on minorities, the minority communities. So, so this is something that the minority community members and professionals tend to lack significantly. That is understanding the value and the importance of having a 30, a 60, and a 90-day plan. Now, some people may only feel comfortable doing a 30-day plan. Another person may say, I can do a 30 and a 60-day plan. And then those that are really about that life will do the 30, the 60, and the 90-day plan. Okay? And here is why it is so important. Establishing, so I would recommend, and I always recommend that clients start their 30, 60, 90-day plans after that initial interview. Once you've had that initial interview to learn a little bit more about the company, to kind of see and gauge if this is a role that you're going to continue moving towards, whether it be something you choose or they choose in terms of if you move forward. But you want to kind of first kind of get that initial contact and learn a little bit more before you start diving into a 30, 60, or 90-day plan. Okay? But once you've had that first interview and they're like, yeah, we want to bring you back, these are the next steps, this is when you can plan to hear something back from us, et cetera, and they get that second interview scheduled, I don't care if that second interview is the last interview in their process or if that second interview is 2 out of 4 interviews in their hiring process. After that first interview, as long as you know you're moving forward to the next step, it is super duper important to start establishing your 30, 60, and 90-day plan. Here's why. When a company is making a decision on whether or not to hire you, you have to understand that there's usually somebody else that is also a good fit. You cannot assume that you are just the only best fit. There can be multiple best fits for a company. And while you may have said all the right things in an interview, you gave all the good examples, we naturally will forget something. Especially if if the person is interviewing a lot of candidates, they can naturally forget certain things, no matter how well their notes are typed out or written out. And so that thing that's going to differentiate you, aside from kind of doing all that preliminary research, is coming in to your final phase and leaving them with your 30, 60, and 90-day plan. When I come in, I plan to come into this role and dominate as if I was the CEO, and here is my plan for how I'm going to be successful. If anybody I've ever interviewed came in with something like that, I would be like, okay. It's like you drop the mic when you leave that interview when you do something like that. And so with the 30-day plan, this is kind of that preliminary phase. This is highlighting how you plan to get acclimated to your new role and integrated into the new team you're going to be in, and how you plan to learn what's going to be needed to be successful while you are trying to establish a plan of action to be impactful within your role. So that's what the first 30 days typically entail. They're going to have their own onboarding process, training and development and all that stuff. That's all fine and dandy. This is them seeing, oh, this is my plan to supplement what you're already going to provide to me. So if you don't plan on providing me any training and development, this is what I'm going to do. If you do plan on providing some training and development, this is still what I'm going to do, because this is what is going to be needed for me to get integrated into the team very seamlessly, and so that I can jump right in, excuse me, and so that I can jump right in and kind of hit the ground running. Your first 30 days, you don't want to talk about, well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. No, no, no. Your role when you come in those first 30 days is to learn, is to listen, to get acclimated to the team, to find where the synergy is so that you can start to be impactful. Yes, you're going to be completing tasks and duties, but ultimately, this is what I know is needed for me to be able to make the impact that I need to make. I can't go into an organization and say, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm about to hire some new people for y'all, and I'm going to do this workshop about this, that, and the other, if I haven't taken the time to understand what the company needs, what the employees think and feel, who the employees are. I have to get acclimated when I'm establishing some sort of long-term contract with a company or a long-term relationship. Works the same way if you're trying to get hired by a company. So no matter what level you're at, that first 30 days, yes, you're going to jump in and be completing tasks within those first couple of weeks of getting hired, but you need to have a 30-day plan on how you're going to get acclimated to your new team and learn what's needed so that you can be successful and start to establish your plan of action to be impactful. Then the next 30 days of that plan, so now we're moving into days 31 through 60, that's going to include that 30-day plan, right? That portion, in addition to creating and assessing the objectives you want to meet and how you're going to measure your success. So now, in those next 30 days, while you are still learning, you are also now establishing these, excuse me, y'all, I got like the hiccups. You're going to start establishing these are the objectives that I want to meet, and this is how I'm going to measure my success. So if I've learned there is a serious need for this company to have some team building. A lot of the people say they don't feel connected to their team members. It's a huge disconnect in terms of how workflows are going. I don't understand and know what this person even does within my department. That's going to let me know, okay, we need to have a better understanding of who we're working with or within the company, who the different employees are working within that department, what their roles are, and where their strengths and weaknesses lie so that workflows can work efficiently. Okay, now that I know that, now that I've learned that within those first 30 days, now these are the objectives that I want to set forth. I want to improve workflow efficiency by, let's say, 10%, after completing a team building workshop. I want the employees within the organization to be able to, or within that department, to be able to identify one strength for each of their different team members so that they know who to tap into in order to be successful with any given project that comes through the pipeline. Okay, these are my two objectives. And now this is how I'm going to measure it. I'm going to do this activity to see if the employees now know who they're, not who, excuse me, if these employees know the strengths of each individual on their team, at least one strength. And then for the other piece, I'm going to have a different measurement point that's going to allow the company to see this is my objective. This is which the objective is what you're going to measure. And then this is how I'm going to measure that objective. I'm able to create that after I've learned about the company's needs. Then, after you get out of days 31 through 60, then you move into day 61 through 90. And day 61 through 90 includes your 30 and your 60-day plan, plus your strategy to now implement any new procedures, a plan of action, and what areas do you need to continue to grow in order to be successful. And all of this is established prior to your final interview. Okay. And so I know y'all are probably like, what the heck? That was a whole lot. It's not as overwhelming as it sounds. We do use templates with our clients to help them kind of map it out. We usually only focus on like 1 or 2 objectives for that 60-day portion of the plan, the days 31 through 60. And then for day 61 through 90 is like 1 or 2 additional objectives. Because the company understands and knows you got to come in and that plan is going to change and shift. But if you ask the right questions, do the right research, and understand what your strengths are and your value proposition, you're able to build out some of this before even coming in. And that is going to let them know they got somebody that's going to come in and that's going to be impactful and deliver results versus someone who's coming in and waiting for someone to tell them what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. Drop a 1 if that makes sense. And if it don't make sense, drop a 2. Let me give you that option too. Drop a 2 if it don't make sense so that I can capture it a little bit more. And don't be shy if it don't make sense. That is okay. Okay, I think I just see 1s. Okay, good, good, good. All right, so that is kind of that last caveat for how to ace your interview. Now, I'm going to recap here in a second before we jump into Q&A, but I want to just let you guys see the benefits of adequately preparing for your interview. So this is a client of mine. Her name is Tony. She was making $35,000 a year when she came to me, and she was like, I am so tired of working for this dealership, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. We ended up getting her, she did interview prep. She did a resume, and then when she got to the interview phase, she's like, oh my God, I need an interview prep. I should have did a package. I want to pay for an interview prep. So it's like, okay, cool. Let's do this interview prep. We got all her stuff together. I worked with her. She actually had 1 interview, but when she realized that it was just 1 interview, we went to the drawing board and we stayed up all night establishing her 30, 60, and 90-day plan so that we can email it to the interviewer by that next morning so that they can have it and use it in their decision-making process. And sure enough, she got the job, and they were originally supposed to pay her $45,000. I told her, ask them, let them know you want at least 50. So they came back and said the interviewer said that they are going to push for the 50, as you can see in the text message. She said that the person is fighting for at least 50,000, and they actually ended up asking to bring me in to do some professional development with their employees within their organization. And then I talked to her about positioning herself as a freelance compliance specialist because I want her to have additional streams of income. Don't just rely on working for an employer. Always have a way to attract additional income for yourself where you are in control of what it is that you're doing and how you do it. Because when you work for a company, you're still bound by their rules, essentially, and their policies. And so she went ahead and we started working on how to position her as a freelance compliance specialist through her LinkedIn page to start to attract clients, just period, on the compliance side, so that she has that stream of income while she's trying to build a business. She's also trying to build another business. So that's that with Tony. We did that crash course on interviewing, and it came back that they went ahead and did like 52,000. They went over like $2,000, which, I mean, to some that may seem small, but going over to that 52 is pivotal for some people. The extra couple of thousand is important. And then we also added in for her annual reviews for her to be considered for performance bonuses when she meets certain metrics. And so because she had that 30, 60, 90-day plan, she was able to say, hey, can I be evaluated on some of these different points to assess whether or not I can receive certain bonuses? And they agreed. So you position yourself at every phase of the job search process to begin negotiating for salary. So let's do a quick recap so that I can leave these last 10-ish minutes for Q&A. So basic 4-step strategy to kind of capture. Oh, that looks a little, it's hard to see that. It looks so clear on my screen. Okay, so the first step is research. Research company objectives, pain points, and strategic goals, and also research your interviewer. Step 2, analyze. So I'm going to read it twice so that you can, if you can't see that second one, that you can write it down. You want to analyze your experiences against the job description to assess your fit to the role. And I'm going to say it one more time for those of you that are trying to write that one down because you can't see it. You want to analyze, for step 2, your experiences against the job description to assess your fit for the role. And you can maybe add in there where you add the most value, like in parentheses or something. Step 3, follow up. Be sure to inquire about hiring timelines and next steps so you can plan what your follow-up process will look like. And then creating a plan. Having your 30, 60, and 90-day plan to convey is super duper imperative. So, Simone, if you want to come on back, I have E3's contact info here, as well as another testimonial from one of our clients in the financial space. She was an assistant VP and now serve as a senior advisory member for a financial institution. So she is like flying up the ladder in her career. I'm gonna leave this up here so that as we go through the Q&A, Simone, I know we're getting close on time, but I'm good for like at least until 7:40. I'm good till 7:40 Central Standard Time. I don't know what your availability would be, so I can answer questions for the next like 15-ish minutes.
We definitely appreciate that, DeAnnah. Uh-oh. I've got an echo. Let's see.
You're good over here.
Am I? Do I sound better now?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. So let's see. Our first question was actually from me, and it was about when you're preparing or researching a role, should we? Yes.
DeAnnah, mute while she's talking because there is an echo.
There is.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me mute.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
So my question was, as far as interview prep goes, I know sometimes I've like reached out to people that, uh-oh. Can you guys give me a 1 if you can hear me? Awesome. Okay. So I know in interview prep, sometimes I'll reach out to someone I know who already has the role. Do you think that that's a good idea? And if so, is there like a certain approach that you think we should take when reaching out to that person?
All right. My mic is back on. So yes, that is actually super duper important. That is part of the job search process in general. Making sure you reach out to individuals in the roles you aspire to is not if that's what you're referring to, like reaching out to people who have similar roles. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. I strongly encourage people to do that. What we call those are informational interviews, where you find someone who has the role you're aspiring to have. Of course, in an organization you don't plan to apply to. You don't want to be like, oh yeah, I want this role, unless they got multiple roles. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to be calling somebody up and you're trying to apply for their role or something like that. You definitely don't want to do that. But definitely reaching out to them to let them know, hey, I'm interested in, this is my background and I'm interested in moving into X, Y, and Z role. I see your background and I would love to learn more about how you were able to get into this role and be successful. And that opens up the opportunity for them. Usually I tell people to ask for like maybe 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes of someone's time. And I usually, a lot of my clients, I'm going to be 100% transparent, they navigate this through LinkedIn. So they reach out to people via LinkedIn to schedule informational interviews to learn more about the person, their success, career trajectory, and what you can do to kind of get to their level of success. People love to brag about themselves or
Mm-hmm.
love when someone is like, oh, you're so successful. I want to learn more. I even like it, okay? When people are like, oh my God, I want to learn how you've been so successful with your business. I'm like, who, me? Okay, yes, let me tell you. Let's hop on a call. So it's really good. And what happens is it allows you to have someone who can advocate on your behalf, because then that gives you an opportunity to share a little bit about what you have accomplished. And what will happen is you can let them know, hey, if you know of anything coming through, any pipelines, please, feel free to let me know if you don't mind, so that I can apply for those roles. And if you made a good impression on that person, they will actually, let you know or mention you to different colleagues that are looking to fill those types of roles. So that is a very, very important process in our job search process in general.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Next question. I believe it was from Margot, and I'm going to scroll up just to make sure I've got the right question here. What are your recommendations on bringing up salary during the interview if it's not published or made known by the employer?
Okay, so you do not want to ask about salary information in the first interview, because that's kind of like the first phase. However, if they tell you this is the only step in their interview process, then you can go ahead and bring up salary negotiation. But you usually want to save it for towards that second to last kind of interview, because you don't want to waste your time if they say this is the budget we have allocated. But B, you don't want to be too preemptive before they've even shown or demonstrated an interest. And so I always tell people, unless during that interview, if they say, hey, this is the only interview in our search process in terms of how many interviews we have before we make a decision, then that is the time to say, oh, okay, so, a couple questions then to follow up. How long do you think it'll be before you all make a decision? And then B, what kind of budget did you guys have allocated for the person you're bringing into this position? What type of budget is allocated for securing this role? And then that's going to let you know, that's going to open the doors for them to say, well, right now we're anticipating we're going to be able, the most we'll be able to start this role at, or this is the salary range we're going to start this role at, but we offer this, and this as benefits. And they'll start to, if it's a low salary or they know it's low, they'll start to kind of beef up the other benefits. Now, a lot of companies, as of recently, I'm trying to think of some experiences that I've had when I've worked with companies with their hiring to diversify their hiring. They will try to be forthcoming in that initial interview to weed out the individuals that aren't a good fit. And so that's another reason why it's important that your resume is on point too, because when they look at that resume, they can see if you're a $100,000 type employee or if you are a $40,000 employee. And that's what they're going to gauge from your resume. So if they see, whoa, this person produces these type of results, they probably ain't coming in at no less than $80,000. If they bring you into that interview, especially if they're like a strong company in terms of how long they've been in business, their revenue and things like that, they probably got the budget to compensate you somehow, because they already can see you're a high ticket person. They're not bringing in somebody that's not producing results with a salary range. They're not going to bring in somebody that produces results if they know they got a salary range of like $40,000, $50,000, and they know this person has worked for, multi-billion-dollar companies. They've generated this much in sales. This person ain't going to take this job. They're not going to bring you in for an interview. And that's one of the important factors in making sure your resume is up to par, because it allows you, or it allows for those companies that are going to play games with compensation. It kind of weaves them out a little, not all the time, but sometimes it'll weave them out.
Awesome. Thank you. Quick question from Women Exceeding for some context around Tony's story. Was that a large company that she negotiated those terms with?
Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, there we go. So she negotiated with that company. I think they're employee size, it was between, I would say they were a small company because they had less than 1,000 employees.
Okay.
Yeah, it was less than 1,000 employees. So they didn't have a huge budget. And because of where she was coming from, she was comfortable. She was like, I just need to start at 50. I just need to start at 50. And so she was able to target a small company and get in at 50 and get those performance bonuses and get the additional experience that she needed, because she still needed more experience to move into the level of compliancy she wanted to be in. So she took a role as an IT specialist and focuses on different IT issues, but she also frames, make sure they're in compliance with certain policies as it pertains to the IT work that they do.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Margot. She says, I haven't interviewed in 7+ years. Is it common for interviewers to ask hypothetical questions? For example, if you were in this situation, what would you do? I know in our company, all of our interview questions are, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when. So that's a great question. Do you feel like hypothetical questions are still common?
Yes, and yes. Those are behavioral interview questions. They want to know, what would you do in a situation like X, Y, and Z? So absolutely, and it is totally fine to have a snippet of a story that is going to support why you would do X, Y, and Z. But always make sure you include, no matter what the hypothetical situation is, you include how you're going to take action, but also making sure you include, you're going to assess what the best course of action is. Making sure, I'm not going to take action without thinking about what's going to be the best course of action, what's going to be action that poses minimal risks and minimal threats to the company, the department, our objectives, etc. Good question.
That makes me think of, we have the STAR format, where it's situation, task, action, result. And I've done so many interviews in that format that I feel like I answer all kinds of questions that way. And so that's good to know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes, the STAR format is really good because it helps to keep you on track, because you don't want to be long-winded either in your response. So that's why it's important to already have the examples you want to point to, even though you don't know the questions in advance. You want to have your 2 to 3 examples already in your back pocket that highlights how you're going to tell that story, what points you're going to bring out, so that it's only an additional maybe 30 seconds, added to whatever your response is at most.
Okay. Next question is from Shelby. She asks, is it appropriate to ask your potential employer, what does success look like for them in the first interview?
I keep forgetting that I'm muting myself to avoid the kickback. Yes, so it is totally appropriate to ask what success, you said what success looks like for that supervisor or that that person that's interviewing them. Is that what you said?
What does success look like for them in the interview? Or I'm sorry, what does success look like for them?
For them, meaning the person that's being interviewed, or the person, I'm assuming the person that's being interviewed. That would make the most sense. But I'm gonna okay, she said yes. Okay. So yes, that is a good question. That lets you know what they envision as being successful for you. And that's also going to let you know, as the person coming into the role, the interviewee, if what their vision for success looks like is aligned with what you plan to do or what you want to do. So if they say, we envision that someone that will be successful in this role will be able to generate 2 million in sales a quarter, and you're like, yeah, no, that's not happening. Like, that's going to let you know right there, okay, this is not what I thought it was. This is not the direction I want to go in. Let me save everybody a lot of time. So yes, that is a very good question to ask.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Any tips beyond what you've shared on negotiating salaries? Probably a big question for a lot of us out there, especially with we're fighting against the gender wage gap as women. So please, any tips you can give us, we'd love to have from you.
Aside from what I've already shared, I would say making sure you research what the salary averages are in your area, A. So actually, you're going to research it nationwide, what the salary average is for those types of roles. Then you're going to research what it is geographically in your area. Then you're going to also look and see what either that role or roles that are similar in their tiers, what roles typically pay at. So that gives you an understanding of where you may fall into in terms of a adequate salary range, right? Because if you are going in, let's say as an IT specialist, and IT specialist nationwide makes on average $65,000, let's say, right? In your area, they make $68,000. And within that company, people that have specialist roles or roles that require at least 5 to 7 years of experience, which which may equate to roughly what is needed for an IT specialist, they've been getting paid $64,000. So that's going to let you know, okay, I'm going to come in at between 65 and 70. That is my range because of the value that I know I add. I know I'm not asking for nothing crazy. I'm not coming to say, I want y'all to pay me $100,000. And they're like, man, who gets paid that much in this world? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you going to do? Run the company? So, you want to be reasonable. You definitely want to understand what your value is and ask for your worth and negotiate, the value you're going to be bringing. However, you do want to make sure you're also reasonable. And so coming in to ask for $100,000 and you see nationwide, statewide, and company-wide, nobody is making it at that level, that might be quite a bit preemptive. And so you're going to have some serious receipts as to why you should be paid that amount. It's not impossible. It's just, you got to be able to come in and say, look, y'all been generating as a company $2 million a year. I can get y'all $2 million in a quarter, right? You got to come in with those type of results and be able to really convey why they should go kind of above and beyond their own budget when it comes to compensating you. But it's not impossible because there are people out there that have the results to back up. Like, I don't care what your budget is. I don't care what you're paying nobody else. I know this is what I should be getting paid for X, Y, and Z, and I can prove and show my results. And so there you'll be able to get what you want. But research. Short answer is research. Research the salary.
Thank you. Last question, and I'll say, Maya, this is a great question, and DeAnnah may not be able to answer it to the depth that she really can in the amount of time that we have. And so I would suggest watching the first part 1, because I think that'll help with this question as well. The question is, if I'm trying to pivot into a different career path, would you recommend trying to target smaller companies to get my foot in the door?
No, actually, I would recommend to target smaller companies simply because it is a career pivot. Now, if you have other reasons for targeting smaller companies, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with targeting smaller companies, but you can very much so pivot depending on what level you're trying to pivot at, with a mid-sized company, with a large company, or a small company. So it really will depend on what type of pivot you're trying to make and at what level you're trying to make that pivot. But small companies, it's not a bad tactic, but I wouldn't say like, yes, that's what you need to do, to make a pivot.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Maya. Definitely, not just Maya, everyone on, if you have not seen the first part 1, definitely check it out. It was absolutely fantastic. This is DeAnnah's information here. If you would like to get a hold of her, this is her information. Obviously, she's got the secret sauce, so please reach out to her. A little bit more from us. DeAnnah, when you don't have a plan and know your value, everything looks like an opportunity. I love it. Last but not least, please continue to support Women Exceeding. We appreciate you all of you being with us. You can join our mailing list. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Women Exceeding. Please like we on our Facebook. You can donate via Cash App at $Women Exceeding. And please support our wine fundraiser. We've got an awesome wine fundraiser going on. DeAnnah and I, we looked at some of the wines before we started the webinar. We were like, oh, okay. So check them out. And then, of course, if you guys have any questions for Women Exceeding, or if there's something that you want to see from us, please email us at info@womenexceeding.com. And I will close it with thank you so much, DeAnnah. Is there anything you want to say before I let you go? And then I think Christina might have something that she wants to share.
Oh, go ahead. Christina can go first real quick.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. I just wanted to add that if you are looking for additional ways to support Women Exceeding, we are always looking for guest bloggers. We are always, you can always nominate a woman to be a Woman Crush Wednesday. You can always volunteer to host a webinar like we have done today with DeAnnah. Thank you so much. So those are some additional options, and please visit our link tree. I've dropped it into the chat box. It has all the different ways that you can support us there. And please, please, please join our mailing list. That's how you find out about these great events. I promise that we do not spam you. You might get 1 to 2 emails a month, if that. So yeah, thank you so much for joining our webinar, and I will give it to DeAnnah if she has anything additional to say.
Yes. So before you guys leave, and I'm sure you guys, not I'm sure, but you guys can also send this out when you send out your email, kind of to wrap up and thank everyone. Anybody that does want to book services, they can book at any service for a 15% discount as long as they mention the code Women Exceeding. But they have to secure services and pay by tomorrow, which is Thursday, 11:59 p.m. So I will extend that to anyone, even if they didn't make the webinar, but they're like, I'm gonna look at the replay and I want to jump in and get the service. Just mention Women Exceeding, and we will do 15% off. I'm gonna let my admin manager know so that everyone can take advantage of that. And as long as you pay by 11:59 p.m. on Thursday, June 25th, you will get that discount. Any service.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And again, thank you for all that you do. You're fantastic, and you're always a pleasure to have on all the great information. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you all enjoy your evening.